I want to start here because I believe this sets the context for it. This channel is called Defensive Politics Asia. And I think he gives a really good breakdown of what took place yesterday. There are people who do a much better job of dealing with battlefield analysis, maps, and everything else. He's very good at it. I'm going to let him explain it because for everything else that we talk about and for everything else that happens this week, what he is saying is setting the context of it all. This is his channel. This is him giving his take. I have 2 spots for this. This is just the first one, and then I'm going to play the second one after.
Hello, everyone. This is Defense Politics Asia, and I think it's happening. I have, since late February, I have done an analysis and managed to come out with this estimate when the total collapse of the front line will start. And which means that the Ukrainians have lost so much manpower to the point where they lost effective defensive capability. I think we are starting to see this happening. This past day has some insane frontline changes. So this is the frontline changes report for the past 24 hours for the 11th of August for the day of 1,265. And I'll go through this. It's actually over here in the north of Pokrov front. This is Pokrov, Minohrad, and the Russians have broke through. The entire front line along this line here has total collapse, like total collapse. The Russian forces have advanced a matter of 9 to 10 kilometers. And this is the total. This is something that I did mention in the previous report that it looks like the line has collapsed. The Russian, there's no more defenses in the rear position. The Russians could break through, and it looks like this total collapse is finally happening.
Now, also add to that, just to add to that, Russia still has 2 militaries in reserve that it has not used. So not only is the front line collapsing, as I was explaining with Mark on the show of Kramatorsk, Slaviansk, these last defensive lines in Donbass are being flanked, if not surrounded at certain point, but it definitely flanked. This is not a recipe for success. This is a complete catastrophe. When Bakhmut fell, when Avdiivka fell, when these fortress cities that took months and months and months of going after fell, and now you have what was a lava flow, as it was called, this inexorable push to the west. That's no longer lava flow. They're breaking through. They're pressuring on so many fronts. And Ukraine has lost so many men from desertions or from just being broken and just being broken. Like this guy. This dude sitting on a tank. Hundreds of thousands of amputees. Add to that hundreds of thousands of amputees, 400,000 at least, people who effectively fled to avoid being shot in the face. That's pretty extreme, right? I hope you get my point. Not only is Ukraine losing with the battlefield that it has currently, Russia hasn't even put in the forces yet. It's a coup de grace, I suppose. This is not a recipe for success. This is setting the context for everything that is happening now. Donald Trump bellyache, Donald Trump complain, oh, these are horrible people. Oh, I'm so angry at Vladimir Putin. I'm going to put sanctions. You have 50 days. You have 10 days. Okay, let's negotiate. Let's negotiate. Wake off. Go. Give him a deal. Give him a deal. He sees that. He sees that. And to make this clear, I'm going to go to another part of the video where he gives another breakdown of this. I suppose I can stop there, but I do want to show this other part. He does a really good breakdown of the map. Check out his entire video. I'm just doing a small portion of this because it's his video. I don't want to take his limelight. But he does a great breakdown. It suits my purposes in regards to trying to explain why we are here in the moment now. Let's go back to him. And this right here. If we can get this without it spinning. Come on. Hate it when it does that.
A day in terms of square kilometers. then we can confirm that the Ukrainians is in total free fall. So the right now this is like the beginning of this free fall, very very serious situation, and and this is looking like a deer. No, this is the deer's head. No, and then you have some beard. And then the eyes is here, and then you have a very very long horn. As I said, this is a very, very serious report. It's a very, very serious situation. And one should never like talk about horns on the horn. But because this is a very, very serious situation because of the horn that has developed on the deer's head, no, you need to know. You really need to know. And it's and I mentioned a long, long time ago. So I know this is a Frontline Changes report, but I think I need to say a bit more because Frontline Changes report tend to have more people watching. I want to say I have mentioned many times ago in my analysis, even in the super panels, talking with history legend, really OEM, Dan Castle. I've mentioned that the Russians is unlikely to go into Slovians and Kramatorsk.
Now, one of the things that he points out is that this advance that started off as 5-10 kilometers eventually will be 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 kilometers a day, at which point all bets are off. All bets are off. Now, they've marshaled Azov Battalion, in order to effectively go to try to stem the line. But some of the reporting is that they're trying to hold some areas at the expense of others because, again, they have a significant manpower shortage. All right. I'm saying that, again, to set the context. Donald Trump gave a fascinating briefing the other day. Fascinating briefing. And I'm going to go through that at 8 o'clock because there are very parts of that is mind-blowing, including one of the parts where he effectively threatens Europe and Zelensky. It was not reported much. But when Donald Trump makes this argument, hey, man, if I can't get this, I'll walk. That's not a threat to Russia. As I've shown you the battlefield lines, Ukraine is losing more and more ground and losing the capability of defending itself every day. That's not a threat to Russia. That's a threat to Ukraine. That's a threat to Europe, who in no way has the capability of maintaining this particular battle. One of the reports that came out of Financial Times is that Europe is feverishly trying to increase its defensive armaments, I guess, with some idea of a war with Russia. Slavian Grad also pointed out this, and I'm going to flip to this. Basically, in a nutshell, Britain acknowledging that Trump daddy may be upset if they crash his plans for some kind of rapprochement, has effectively told other European leaders, shut up, stop complaining, stop making these statements. You are not making our lives easier. If you piss him off, daddy will leave us again. Daddy will leave. Useless comments, Britain called EU leaders to shut up and not interfere with Putin and Trump's negotiations. British authorities have called out European leaders to stop making, quote, useless comments, unquote, about the talks between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. This was reported in The Telegraph. It's reported that London is increasingly concerned about public statements made by figures such as Emmanuel Macron, Merz, and Kaja Kallas. Very beautiful, very dumb. The British fear that making public demands to the United States president may have unpleasant consequences and lead to him excluding Europe from negotiations altogether. Now, if you remember, as I pointed out, Europe didn't quite know what Donald Trump was doing. They were effectively calling the White House saying, hey, what is the plan? What are you agreeing to? What is going on? And there was all sorts of contradictions that was built into what the Trump administration was effectively telling Europe. They were on the outs. They didn't know. Think of these colonial powers, these former masters of the universe, in the way that they used to take over other countries and colonize those countries and everything else, relegated to A, being humiliated by the US president, and B, locked out of European security when they themselves are Europe. That is fantastic. I want to go to the other one too. So this was, I'll go to this one second. What if these European leaders are freaking out because Donald Trump actually does want a deal. Now, I understand what Mark is saying. I understand what Brian Beletic are saying. I understand what some of the more cynical people are saying. And they are right in an overarching context. Like if you're talking about, is U.S. policy going to change in relation to trying for world supremacy? No, it is not. Will U.S. policy change in the specific cases where the U.S. policy is getting demolished and the United States is going to be radically humiliated? Yes. Yes. It's not that it's a strategic change. It's a tactical maneuver because they have to effectively deal with chaos and a catastrophe that is effectively taking place in one of the wars that they initiated. Now, because they have to deal with that catastrophe, well, what do? Do you let it fall apart where you have an Afghanistan situation where people are hanging on to these huge airplanes and you have American bases being overrun by the Taliban with them playing around in American devices? Or do you try to stem the bleeding and say we need a settlement regardless of what that settlement is? We cannot allow this to collapse in this way. We can't allow the Russians to take all of Ukraine, even if it takes them 2 years to do so, especially if the Ukrainian military collapses and it doesn't take 2 years. If you are getting military assessments and they are on some level honest, where they're like, sir, they are going to fall. You need to do something now. Hence, the panicky, the desperation that is coming out of the Trump administration and effectively trying to get Putin to the negotiating table in order to make some deal, any deal. Initially, you had J.D. Vance saying, well, the Russians want too much. What about now? With the military assessment that I just gave you, what about now? Is it the Russians want too much now, or we need to make a deal because our situation has gotten that desperate? I think it's that. It's not that U.S. policy on the global sense has changed. I mean, they just made a deal with Azerbaijan and Armenia where they're going to have security cooperation in the southern border of Russia. The plan, the strategy hasn't changed. The issue is that on one specific part of the chessboard, they are not doing well. And this is a particular part of the chessboard where they've invested hundreds of billions of dollars, a huge amount of global attention, a huge amount of propaganda. And what does it look like when NATO, an organization that has spent the last 50 years trying to arm up against the Soviet Union, loses to a remnant of that Soviet Union in the middle of Europe? I think that what Donald Trump realizes is he needs a deal. And that whatever he offered to Putin, Sweden was sweet enough for Putin at the very least acknowledge that this was grounds for negotiations. The whole Vance, Putin wants too much is seemingly out the window. The question becomes, what is that deal? What is Putin willing to accept? As I pointed out, Jeff, I'm coming to you right now. Under normal circumstances, when leaders give their demands, they're maximalists. Putin's demands seem reasonable. By the same token, though, is he like every other leader and give demands that are maximalist, meaning there is some gray area, there is some wiggle room within the context of those demands that Donald Trump can effectively exploit in order to try to get some kind of deal to settle this for the next several years. The other question to this is Europe and Zelensky. In that press conference, where Donald Trump effectively said, I will walk, that's aimed at them. Don't screw up my deal, considering this is an outright catastrophe that can turn into an apocalyptic disaster. I want to go to my guests.